Ashley's nails dragged down Brian's cheek, leaving angry red marks in their wake. "You monster!" she shouted, her voice trembling with rage. Brian stumbled back, his chair rolling into the wall. "What the hell?" he cried, clutching his face. David's hands shot out, gripping Ashley's shoulders and pulling her back before she could strike again. "Kitten, stop! What's going on?" She twisted in his grasp, her eyes blazing, tears already forming. "You know exactly what he did." David's stomach knotted. "What did he do?" Ashley's chest heaved as she pointed at Brian, her voice breaking. "That night, the hotel, when everything happened. I remember his face. He was there." Xander blinked hard, looking between her and Brian. "What?" Brian's mouth opened, then closed again, his eyes darting to David in silent panic. "Dave, don't Dave me," David snapped, his protective calm shattering. "What is she talking about?" Ashley's voice dropped to a trembling whisper, but it carried through the room. "He was the one who touched me. Before I passed out, I didn't see everything, but I remember. I felt." She shook her head, hugging herself. "And now you tell me he's going to be my doctor?" The room went cold. David turned slowly toward Brian, his jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "Brian, tell me she's lying right now." Brian swallowed, taking a step back. "It's not what you think." David's hand slammed down on the desk with a crack that made Ashley flinch. "Then make me understand before I put you through that wall." Ashley buried her face in her hands, tears spilling over. She had fought so hard to forget that night, to believe it was just some nameless shadow in her past. And now here he was, standing under hospital lights in a white coat, pretending to be her doctor. Xander moved toward her, crouching to her. "Level, Ash? Are you sure?" She nodded, her voice a choked whisper. I'll never forget his voice. "Key called me sweetheart." David's blood ran hot. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled off his mask, not caring about the risk anymore, and took Ashley's trembling hands. "Kitten, you're safe now, I promise." Then he turned, eyes locked on Brian like a predator. "You've got 10 seconds to explain before I drag you out of here myself." Brian's lips parted, but no words came out. Brian's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed, the air thick enough to choke on. "Fine," he said finally, his voice low. "I was there that night, but I didn't do what she thinks I did." Ashley stiffened. "You're lying. I'm not." Brian shot back, his voice rising in desperation. "Dave, you know, I wouldn't cross that line. Not with her, not with anyone." David's glare didn't soften. "Start talking from the beginning." Brian ran a hand down his face, wincing as his fingers brushed the scratches she'd left. "It was the night of the corporate gala. I was in the hotel because you." He looked straight at David, "called me. You said you needed a medical kit and a clean room. I didn't ask questions. I got there and found her in the hallway, drenched, barely conscious, shaking. I carried her into the room. She kept trying to push me away, mumbling things I couldn't make out. I checked her pulse, made sure she wasn't in shock, and then—" He trailed off, his eyes flicking to Ashley. David's tone sharpened. "And then what? And then you came in, Dave, mask on. You told me you'd handle it from there and told me to get out. I didn't. I didn't touch her like that. I swear on my life." Ashley's brow furrowed, confusion clouding her anger. "But I remember someone calling me sweetheart." Brian's lips tightened. "That wasn't me. That was him." The words hit like a stone dropped into a still pond. Ashley slowly turned her gaze to David, who stood frozen, mask in his hand, jaw locked. Her voice trembled. Dave Xander swore under his breath. "Oh, hell." David took a step toward her, his eyes soft but his voice unsteady. "Kitten, I was the one in that room with you. I'm the one who's been with you ever since. I never wanted you to find out this way." Lee's chest rose and fell rapidly, the truth she'd been chasing for months suddenly staring her in the face. "It was you, all along." "Yes." David's voice broke slightly. And I didn't hurt you. Swear. All I did was keep you safe that night, but I couldn't walk away. Couldn't stop thinking about you. Her lips parted. But no. Words came out. She felt dizzy, the walls pressing in. She had trusted him, clung to him, and now every moment between them carried a shadow of that night. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. David's eyes glistened. "'Cause I was afraid you'd hate me before you knew the whole story. I needed time to show you who I am, not just the man you saw that night." Ashley's knees wobbled, and she took a step back as if putting distance between them could undo the truth. "You lied to me," she said, her voice shaking. "For 2 months, every hug, every word, every promise, you lied." David reached out, but she flinched. "Kitten, please don't call me that." Her voice cracked, echoing in. "The office. That night, I thought I was alone with a stranger. I didn't know it was you. If you let me believe it was someone else, you let me blame him." She turned her tear-streaked face toward Brian, shame flashing in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Brian shook his head. "It's not me you owe an apology to. But I understand." David stepped closer again, desperation creeping into his voice. "I was protecting you, Ash. You were so broken when I found you. If you'd known right away, you would have pushed me away before I could prove that I'd never hurt you." Ashley laughed bitterly, wiping at her cheeks. "And lying to me was your way of protecting me. I didn't know how else to keep you close," David admitted, his voice raw. "I fell in love with you before I even realized what was happening. Every day I told myself I'd confess, but every day I was more afraid of losing you." She stared at him, breathing hard, her heart caught between fury and the faint, stubborn thread of love she'd felt for him. Xander, sensing the tension was seconds from snapping, stepped forward. "Look, Ash, I'm not taking sides, but Dave's telling the truth. I was there the morning after. I didn't lay a finger on you that way. I stayed up all night just making sure you were breathing." Ashley's voice softened, but the hurt in her eyes didn't fade. "I believe you didn't touch me. But you touched my trust, Dave, and I don't know how to get that back." David's jaw clenched. "Then I'll earn it back, no matter how long it takes. But I'm not walking away from you or our child." Ashley's hands instinctively moved to her belly. The room felt unbearably small, and the pressure in her chest made it hard to breathe. "I need some air," she said, brushing past him, toward the door. David let her go, not because he wanted to, but because he knew chasing her right now might shatter what little remained between them. Brian exhaled heavily. "You've got a storm coming, Dave." David didn't take his eyes off the door. "Then I'll stand in the rain until she lets me back in." Ashley pushed through the hospital's sliding glass doors, gulping in the crisp morning air, as if it could wash the ache out of her chest. She walked to the edge of the parking lot, hugging herself, her mind spinning. The truth had landed like a punch to the gut. David. It had always been David. She wanted to be furious, to scream, to walk away. But her heart betrayed her, whispering. Every warm moment they'd shared, every time he'd made her feel safe when the world hadn't. "Still crying, little one?" The voice froze her in place. She turned slowly. A tall man in a charcoal coat stood under a nearby tree, his face half hidden in the shadows. He looked older than David, but his sharp, assessing eyes sent a shiver down her spine. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" she asked, instinctively stepping back. He smiled faintly. "Not yet, but I know him, David." Ashley's pulse quickened. "And you are, let's just say, someone who's not thrilled to see my nephew getting tangled up with a teenager and a scandal." Her breath caught. "Your nephew." The man stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. "Richard Blackwood, David's uncle, and believe me, sweetheart, you're walking into something much bigger than love or lies." Ashley's fingers curled at her sides. "If you came here to scare me," Richard chuckled. "Oh, I don't need to scare you. The truth will do that for me." Did David tell you why he hides behind that mask? Or why his family's so desperate to control who he marries? She didn't answer, but the flicker in her eyes gave him all the confirmation he needed. Ask him about the night that changed, his face, and the will his father left behind. Then decide if you still want to promise forever. Ashley's lips parted, but before she could speak, a shadow fell over them both. David was there. Mask on, shoulders tense, eyes cold. Get away from her, uncle. Richard raised an eyebrow, smirking. Protective, aren't we? Just like your father was, before he ruined everything. David stepped between them, his voice low and dangerous. If you touch her life or our child's, I'll make sure you regret it. Richard only tipped his head in mock respect and walked away, leaving the echo of his footsteps and the weight of his words behind. Ashley looked up at David, confusion and fear battling in her eyes. What did he mean, Dave? About your face? About your father? David's jaw tightened. Not here. Not now. When? Then. She demanded. He met her gaze for a long, heavy moment. Soon. But you have to trust me, even after today. Ashley hesitated, and for the first time she wasn't sure if she could. David didn't let go of her hand the entire walk back inside, but Ashley could feel his grip was tighter than usual. Protective, almost possessive. She didn't say anything, afraid one wrong word would make him shut down completely. When? They reached Brian's office again. The doctor was seated behind his desk, his cheek faintly red from her earlier outburst. He glanced between them, but chose to keep his expression professional. Shall we get started? Brian asked, gesturing toward the examination bed. Ashley nodded and climbed up, her palms slightly damp. David pulled a chair close to her side, his mask angled toward her like a silent anchor. Brian prepped the ultrasound machine, the gel cold against her skin. This might feel a bit chilly, he warned gently. Ashley flinched but relaxed as David's hand covered hers. And then, there it was. A faint, rhythmic sound filled the room. Thump, thump, thump. Ashley's eyes widened. Is that your baby's heartbeat? Brian confirmed with a smile, strong and steady. Ashley felt tears well in her eyes, and without thinking, she turned her face into David's shoulder. He didn't speak, just stroked her hair with his free hand, others still locked with hers. But Brian's voice broke the moment. David, we should talk privately about some medical considerations. Given her age and stress levels, Ashley stiffened. I don't want you talking about me like I'm not in the room. David's gaze flicked to Brian in warning. Then, back to her kitten, it's just medical talk. But if you want, you can hear everything. She nodded firmly. Brian hesitated, then said, Fine. Ashley, stress is not just bad for you. It can affect the baby. That means no emotional shocks, no confrontations, no. He stopped when David's eyes darkened. What happened just now? Did you meet someone? Brian asked, looking between them. Ashley opened her mouth, but David cut in, his tone controlled. Nothing worth mentioning. Ashley felt a flare of frustration. He was doing it again. Hiding, protecting, deciding for her. Brian finished the scan and printed the images. Ashley took the sheet, staring at the tiny outline that would someday be her child. For a moment, the world felt small and safe again. But as they left the office, Ashley leaned closer to David and whispered, If you keep locking me out, Dave, one day I might stop trying to get in. He froze in the hallway, care words hitting harder than any of Richard's threats. The ride back from the hospital was quiet at first. Ashley sat with her hands resting on the ultrasound photo in her lap, her eyes glued to the little blur that was her baby. David sat beside her, legs slightly apart, one arm stretched along the backrest behind her. But his gaze was fixed out the window. Xander kept his eyes on the road. The tension in the car thick enough to slice through. Ashley broke. The silence? Dave. Who was that man? David didn't look at her. Someone you don't need to worry about. Her fingers tightened around the photo. That's the second time today you've decided what I need to know. His jaw flexed, but he stayed silent. "You promised to protect me," she said softly. "But how am I supposed to feel safe when I can tell you're hiding things from me?" David finally turned his head, his masked face angled toward her. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Kitten, there are parts of my life that are dangerous. If I bring you into them too soon, I risk losing you." "And if you keep me out completely," she countered, "you'll lose me anyway." Xander cleared his throat, like he wished he was anywhere but here. Maybe we should drive. "Xander," David said sharply, never breaking eye contact with Ashley. She didn't back down. "Is that why you wear the mask? To hide from me?" David's shoulders stiffened. For a long moment, the only sound in the car was the hum of the tires against the asphalt. "No," he said finally, voice tight. "The mask is complicated." "Then uncomplicate it," she whispered. David leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly. "Not here, not now, but I promise you, kitten, soon. And when I do, you'll know everything, even the things I'm most afraid to tell you." Ashley studied him for a moment. She wanted to push harder, but something in his Tony Quill parts, warning and vulnerability, made her stop. She turned her gaze back to the photo in her lap. "Fine. But if you break that promise, Dave, I won't forgive you, no matter what I said before." His hand moved to rest lightly over hers, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "I won't break it." From the driver's seat, Xander muttered under his breath, "God help us all when that day comes." They pulled into the underground parking of the penthouse building. Xander cut the engine, but David's hand on Ashley's arm stopped her from getting out immediately. His eyes, though hidden behind the mask, were sharp. "Stay close to me. Don't speak to anyone unless I tell you." "Two," he said. Ashley frowned. Why? Who would even a sharp knock on the car window made her flinch? Xander cursed under his breath. Great. Of all the people? Standing just outside was a tall, impeccably dressed woman in her early 50s. Her posture screamed authority, and her icy, calculating word locked directly on David. "Dave," Ashley whispered. "Who is she?" David didn't answer. He pushed open his door, stepping out with an air of reluctant civility. "Mother." Ashley froze. "Mother." Mrs. Wexler's gaze swept over her son before drifting to the inside of the car landing, squarely on Ashley. Her lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. "So, this is the little distraction I've been hearing about." David's entire frame went rigid. "You're not welcome here, Mother. Leave." Her laugh was soft, but it cut like glass. "You've been avoiding my calls, canceling the meetings about your engagement. And now I find out you're hiding she tilted her head toward Ashley's teenage mistress in your home. Tell me, David, is this really how you want to tarnish the family name?" Ashley's cheeks burned, shame and anger battling inside her. She started to open her mouth, but David's hand was already on hers, a silent command to stay quiet. "Say one more word about her and I'll have security escort you out," David warned, his voice dangerously low. Mrs. Wexler's expression didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed. "You think you can protect her from me? You forget, David. I know exactly how to destroy people." Xander stepped in between them. "Okay? And I know exactly how to make people disappear if they threaten my friends. Try me, Mrs. V." For a moment, no one moved. Then Mrs. Wexler's eyes flicked to Ashley. Again, scanning her as though memorizing every detail. "Enjoy your little romance while it lasts, David, because soon you'll have to choose between her and everything you've built." She turned on her heel and strode toward the elevator, her heels clicking like gunshots against the marble. David stood perfectly still until she disappeared from view. Then he turned to Ashley, his voice soft but urgent. "Kitten, go upstairs. Now, Dave, please. I'll explain later. Just go." Reluctantly, she obeyed, letting Xander guide her toward the private lift. David stayed behind, his fists clenched at his sides, the mask suddenly feeling heavier than ever. David waited until the echo of her heels faded completely before following her into the empty corner of the lobby. Mrs. Wexler stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, arms folded, looking out at the city skyline as though she owned it. Didn't turn when he approached. "You've gotten reckless," she said finally. "And you've gotten sentimental. Both are dangerous in our world." David stopped a few feet away. "If you came here to insult me, save your breath. You don't get to dictate my personal life." Her head turned slightly, enough for him to catch the faint smirk. "Personal life? You mean the pregnant teenager upstairs?" "Don't bother denying it, Ty already know." His jaw tightened under the mask. "Stay away from her." She stepped closer, her perfume sharp and cold. "I'm not the one you should worry about, David. There are people in the boardroom who would use this scandal to ruin you. Your father's allies are already restless about the postponed engagement to Cassandra Wu. And now they'll have ammunition." "Then let them try," he said flatly. Her eyes hardened. "You're forgetting something. The girl is vulnerable. She has no money, no family willing to defend her. One whisper in the wrong ear, and she'll be destroyed before you can even react. And when that happens, David, she'll blame you." Ski took a slow step forward until they were nearly eye to eye. "If you so much as touch her life directly or indirectly, we'll burn every bridge in this family and take you down with me. If you taught me how to play dirty mother, don't tempt me to use those lessons on you." For the first time, her composure cracked just barely, but it was enough. She took a small step back. "You're still my son. Remember that? I'll give you a little time. But when the choice comes, don't expect sentiment to save you." With that, she brushed past him, her heels once again clicking toward the elevator. David stood rooted to the spot, his chest tight. He knew she wasn't bluffing. Upstairs, Ashley was pacing the living room, worry etched across her face. When David stepped out of the private lift, she rushed to him. "Dave, who was that woman?" She looked at me like she wanted to. "I don't. No, erase me." David cupped her cheeks gently. "She's no one you need to fear, as long as you trust me." Ashley frowned. "I do trust you, but you're hiding something again, aren't you?" David hesitated, torn between protecting her and telling her everything. Finally, he pulled her into a tight embrace, murmuring into her hair, "Kitten, the clock's ticking. I just hope I can win your heart before the truth comes out." David stared at her as if seeing her for the first time, not the girl with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes from the clinic months ago. Not the secret he tucked away in penthouse corners and hushed hotel rooms. No, this was a woman now, one who had been broken, tested, and was still standing. And she wasn't asking to be saved. She was asking to stand beside him. He reached for her hand, his grip firm. "Then come with me tomorrow." Ashley blinked. "Come where?" "The boardroom." She froze. "David, you said they'd tear me apart." "They will, unless I show them who you are. Unless I stop hiding you and give them a reason to be afraid of what you represent." His voice hardened. "They think they can bully you because you're young, alone, pregnant. But what they'll see tomorrow is the woman I chose. The one who makes me dangerous because she makes me feel." Ashley's heart pounded. The thought terrified her, but so did the idea of staying in the shadows while others decided her fate. What if I mess it up? David stepped closer, cupping her jaw gently. "Then we mess it up together. But if you walk in that room beside me, they'll know this isn't about weakness anymore. It's about a new order, and you, Ashley, you're at the center of it." So the next morning, Westview Holdings' 49th floor boardroom, the tension was thick enough to cut. The long glass table reflected polished shoes, expensive watches, and cold eyes. 12 board members sat in silence. Whispering behind leather folders dotted at the head of the table, sat David, cool and unreadable. And beside him Ashley, her chin lifted, hands steady despite the storm inside. Mrs. Vexler sat opposite them, in her tailored navy suit, watching with the calm cruelty of someone who believed the outcome was already written. "Well," she said, tapping her pen, "this is unconventional." David leaned forward. "So was the decision to cancel my engagement to Cassandra Wu. But here we are." Few murmurs broke the silence. One man, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, cleared his throat. David, with all due respect, bringing a young woman with no ties to this company into a confidential meeting. She has ties, David interrupted, stronger than most of you. It's carrying my child. It gives her more stake in the future of this empire than any of you trying to broker backdoor deals through marriage alliances. Another murmur. It's one louder. Sharper, Ashley glanced around, pulse hammering in her throat. But she didn't flinch. I'm not here to threaten anyone, she said. Her voice rang clear. And I don't expect any of you to respect me yet. But I am here to stay. Not because I'm a pawn, but because I've survived what most of you couldn't. I know what it means to fight for something real. Mrs. Vexler's lips curled, but David cut in before she could strike. You all want to talk legacy, he said coldly. Then start understanding that legacy isn't just profit margins and bloodlines. It's choosing who you build with. And I choose her. Silence fell again. This time it didn't feel like defeat. It felt like the beginning of a war. Later that night, Kingsley Estate, private guard in the boardroom, had ended in cold silence and tight handshakes. No one had dared challenge David outright, not yet. But the storm was gathering. David stood by the stone fountain. His suit jacket slung over his shoulder, sleeves rolled up. His shirt was half untucked, the day's weight still clinging to him like smoke. Moonlight shimmered on the water. Ashley sat on the bench nearby, arms wrapped around herself. She hadn't spoken since they got home. He turned to her quietly. You were brilliant today. She didn't look at him. They didn't say a word. Exactly. They thought you were weak, they would have attacked instead. They watched you. That means they're calculating and worried. Ashley drew. In a shaky breath, your mother didn't blink. David sat beside her, double quotes, no, she didn't. But that's what scares me most. When she's quiet, she's plotting. He looked at her, voice low. She won't come at you directly. She'll go after what you care about. Your scholarship application, your medical records, the clinic you volunteer at, maybe even the baby. Ashley's breath caught. Why would she be that cruel? He hesitated, then answered honestly. Because you made me choose. And I chose you. That means she's already lost. Now it's just about making sure I pay for it. A long silence stretched between them. The cicadas hummed in the distance. Finally, Ashley spoke. Then we have to be smarter, not hiding anymore. But I won't let her break us either. She looked up at him, her gaze steadier than it had been all night. Teach me what you know. Every game, every rule. If we're going to survive this, I want to be ready. David blinked, a strange mix of pride and sorrow tightening in his chest. He took her hand. Okay, his voice was steady. We start. With the players, every one of them has something to lose. Find that tand. You have leverage. Ashley nodded slowly. And your mother. He met her gaze. My mother doesn't have leverage. She is leverage. The only way to beat her is to make her irrelevant. Elsewhere, a hidden room in Vexler Tower misses. Vexler watched the boardroom recording on a private screen. Her fingers tapping lightly against her glass of wine behind her. A tall man with a scar across his jaw stood silently, waiting for instruction. She's not folding, she said, eyes fixed on Ashley's face in the video. The girl's learning. She took a slow sip. It's time we introduce her to the cost of loyalty. She turned to the man. Start with her. Records, school, employment, medical. Anything we can use to discredit her. Quietly. I want her isolated before she realizes. She's already drowning. The man nodded and disappeared into the shadows. Mrs. Vexler smiled faintly. Let's see how far David is willing to fall for love. 2 days later, Midtown Health Institute. Ashley stood in the hallway outside her advisor's office, her heart pounding. Something was wrong. She could feel it. The receptionist hadn't met her eyes. The nurse she always greeted with a hug had avoided her. And now her advisor, Dr. Ramsey, usually warm, even fatherly, was staring at her through a tight-lipped frown. Ashley, he said, folding his hands on the desk. We received a letter this morning from the Board of Admissions. Your scholarship is being reviewed for immediate suspension. Her mouth went dry. What? Why? Dr. Ramsey slid a printed document across the desk. Her eyes skimmed the first few lines. Concerns had been raised regarding undisclosed medical history, inconsistencies in residency information, and allegations of falsified recommendation letters. She froze. This isn't true. Her voice cracked. I didn't lie. I never falsified anything. Dr. Ramsey sighed, clearly caught between sympathy and institutional caution. I believe you. But these kinds of accusations don't come from nowhere. Someone has access, Ashley. Someone with power. Her hands trembled as she picked up the paper. This is her, David's mother. She's behind this. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. That evening, penthouse apartment, David slammed the folder on the counter. She forged official documents under Ashley's name. Medical files, reference letters, everything. And because she used my father's foundation server, it passed initial verification. Julian, his tech specialist and closest confidant, sat across from him, typing furiously on a laptop. I can reverse some of it. Not all, but the timing's tight. Your mother's trying to ruin her name before Ashley can fight back. David paced. I should have seen this coming. She's not trying to scare Ashley. She's trying to discredit her permanently. Once the school cuts ties, no medical board will touch her. Julian glanced up. You want to go public? David hesitated. Then, no, not yet. That's what she wants. A media frenzy. A scandal to hang around Ashley's neck. We do this quietly. We expose the forgery to the right people and we do it with proof. Julian cracked his knuckles. Give me 48 hours. And David turned. You need to tell Ashley everything now before she hears it from someone else. Same night, Ashley's apartment, Ashley sat on the floor, surrounded by papers and unanswered calls. Her scholarship notice, case suspension email, even her apartment lease was under review. It was all falling apart. The buzzer rang once, twice. She didn't move. The third time, a soft knock came at the door. Then his voice, Ashley, please, let me in. She stood slowly and opened it. David's eyes were tired, haunted, but still full of something that terrified her more than all the rest. Hope. Everything you're going through, he said, is my fault. She stepped aside silently. He walked in, then turned to face her. It's not just about you being with me. It's about the child, about what you represent. A future my mother can't control. She forged everything to ruin your credibility, and she's not done. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. So what now? I lose my dream. My future. David stepped forward. No, because now you're not alone. He pulled a flash drive from his coat pocket. This is the first crack in her wall. The files she forged, the server trail, the dates. We're going to fight this. She looked at the drive, then up at him. Together. He nodded, double quotes all the way. But Ashley, this fight gets uglier from here. You need to decide if I'm worth it, if we are. Ashley stepped closer, her voice steady. You asked me that before? In the garden, she touched his chest. And I'm still saying yes. Next morning, Midtown Health Institute. Administrative building, Ashley walked down the sterile hallway, heels clicking with quiet defiance. Her braid was neat, her blazer buttoned. And in her hand, clutched like a sword, was the folder David had given her. At the reception desk, the clerk who had avoided her yesterday stood up slowly. Miss Harris, she began. I have an appointment with the dean, Ashley said, voice crisp. I'm not sure he'll see me, Ashley. Cut in, her eyes steady. Tell him I have proof of criminal forgery committed through the Kingsley Foundation server, or I can take this to the state board instead. The woman blinked, then picked up the phone. Ashley waited. She didn't sit, didn't flinch. 3 minutes later, the door opened. "Miss Harris," Dean Landon said, adjusting his glasses. "Come in." Inside the dean's office, Shashley laid out the documents with calm precision. Each forged file, each timestamp, each data trail linked to Mrs. Vexler's internal credentials. Julian had scrubbed and verified every byte. David's legal team had prepped her with what to say and what not to. When she finished, she sat back. The dean stared at the evidence in stunned silence. "This," he murmured, "this is beyond academic misconduct. This is criminal tampering." Ashley nodded once. "I'm not asking for favors. I'm asking for the truth to be acknowledged." He looked at her, a new respect settling in his gaze. "You'll receive a formal letter of reinstatement within the hour. Your records will be restored. And I'll personally make sure this never touches your future again." Ashley let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, but the dean wasn't. "Done, Miss Harris? Are you aware of who you're up against?" She stood, very aware. "And yet you still walked in here alone?" She shook her head. "I'm never alone again. Elsewhere, Vexler Tower, top floor Mrs. Vexler stood by her window, phone in hand, lips pressed tight. So she fought back. Her voice was like silk over steel. Let her think she's won. That's when she'll be the most vulnerable." She hung up, turning to face her assistant. "Leak the photos from Ashley's past. The shelter records. The court papers from her foster years, but anonymously. We don't need fingerprints on this one." The assistant hesitated. "Ma'am, she's pregnant." A slow smile curved Mrs. Vexler's lips. "Then perhaps it's time the world remembers why women like her were never meant to climb this high." Later that night, David's penthouse sat beside David on the balcony. The city lights below stretching like stars in reverse. She leaned into him, his arm wrapped tightly around her. "They'll come again," she said softly. "Let them," David answered. "I'll be ready." But even as he said it, he knew the next blow wouldn't come from a courtroom. It would come from the past, from Ashley's past. And this time, it wouldn't be about lies. It would be about truth. 3 days later, viral headlines storm Ashley. Didn't need to scroll far. It was everywhere. Kingsley Ayre's pregnant girlfriend from foster care to fortune. Exclusive. Leaked records revealed troubled past of Ashley Harris run-ins with social services, psychiatric evaluations, and more. From group homes to penthouse, Cinderella or con artist. Anonymous sources say Ashley lied about her identity to climb the Kingsley ladder. The headlines were brutal. The comments were worse. Ashley sat in the corner of the penthouse. Living room, phone on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. Not because of the gossip, but because the documents were real. Unsealed juvenile. Court records dot her mother's overdose reports. The psychological evil after she was found at age 9. Hiding in a locked closet for 2 days? They hadn't been. Falsified? They had been weaponized. David stormed into the apartment moments later. Julian trailing behind him. "I need every single platform that pushed this to issue takedowns," David snapped. "And track the source of the leak. I want names." Julian nodded. "Already on it. David." He lowered his voice. "Alas. Wasn't hacked? These were sealed records. Someone with judicial access had to pull them." David's hands clenched. "My mother." Ashley didn't move when David approached. He knelt beside her, brushing a hand gently down her arm. "Ashley, look at me." She did, and what he saw in her eyes cracked him not fear, but shame. "It's true," she whispered. "Every word. Of it I thought if I stayed quiet, it wouldn't matter, that my past wouldn't follow me here." David's voice was gentle but firm. "You were a child. You survived things no one should have to. That's not shame. That's strength." Her eyes filled. "But now everyone knows. They think I tricked you, that I'm nothing but some social climbing orphan with a sob story." David stood, slowly, fury tightening in every muscle. "Then let them hear my story next." 2 hours later, national press conference. Kingsley Foundation Hall. David walked onto the stage alone. No lawyers, no handlers. The cameras clicked. He stared straight into the flashing lights, his voice even. Today, private records were leaked about someone I love. They were not faked, they were not twisted, but they were used for one purpose: humiliation. He paused. So, let me be clear. Ashley Harris didn't come into my life with lies. She came with truth. Truth I was too blind to see at first. That love built in honesty and pain is more powerful than all the bloodlines and boardrooms combined. A murmur ran through the crowd. She didn't trap me. I chose her every step, every fight. And if my own mother wants to dismantle my life for that choice, then let her try. 'Cause I'm done hiding. I'm done protecting old legacies, building a new one with her. And then he said her name. Ashley Harris is the strongest person I've ever met, and she is not going anywhere. Back at the penthouse, Ashley watched the press conference unfold on the TV. Tears streamed down her cheeks. But not from pain, from the unbearable weight of being seen fully and still chosen. When the screen faded to black, she whispered to no one, her hand over her heart. Then I won't run either. Not this time. Later that night, Kingsley Penthouse. The world was still roaring outside, news tickers. #think pieces exploding across every platform, but inside the penthouse, it was quiet. Ashley sat by the window, wrapped in a soft, gray blanket. The lights of the city pulsed below like a heartbeat she could finally hear again. The echoes of her past were still out there, exposed and dissected. But something inside her had shifted. She hadn't shattered. She was still here, behind her. The door opened. David stepped in, undone and human, his tie loose, his shirt wrinkled, the weight of the day still heavy on his shoulders. But his eyes softened the moment they landed on her. She turned to him slowly. "You didn't have to say all that today," she murmured. He walked to her, kneeling down so they were eye level. "I needed to say it." His voice was low, raw. "You've been fighting alone your whole life. That ends now." Ashley reached up, brushing her fingers along his cheek. "You exposed yourself to your mother, to the board, to everyone." David took her hand in his. "I exposed the part of me that mattered. Spent years being who they wanted, who she molded, but that version of me. Stowe." He was silent, cold, safe. His voice cracked slightly. "Then you walked into my life, fangry, honest, messy, and I finally remembered what it means to be real." Ashley stared at him, overwhelmed. "You're going to lose everything, aren't you?" He gave a tired smile. "Maybe, but I'd rather lose it with you than keep it alone." Tears slid down her cheeks. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "I don't care if we have nothing, David. Just promise me. Don't shut me out again. Not to protect me, not to fight for me. We do this together now." He nodded, eyes shining together always. Meanwhile, Vexler Estate, private study Mrs. Vexler watched the press conference replay on mute. Her jaw was tight, her glass untouched on the table beside her. Behind her, her lawyer hovered. The media's shifted. Public sympathies swinging toward Ashley. Young women are seeing themselves in her. There's talk of her becoming a foundation ambassador for underprivileged youth. Mrs. Vexler said nothing. The lawyer cleared his throat again. "And David. He's gaining traction. Stock with the boards dropping, but his social capital skyrocketing." Her silence was a blade. "We could back off, change strategy." She stood, eyes hard as stone. "No, we don't back off. We evolve." She walked to the window, the city glowing in the distance. "You see, David thinks he's beaten me with emotion, with honesty, with love." She smiled thinly. "But I didn't build this empire on love. I built it on power." She turned back to the lawyer. "It's time we remind him who really owns his legacy. And who's written out of the will." 3 days later, Kingsley Tower. Boardroom level David stood at the end of the long glass table, his hands resting on the mahogany edge. Around him, the full board sat in tense silence. Some avoided his gaze. Others stared openly already, aligned with the woman now seated at the head of the table, Mrs. Vex, Ler. She was pristine, spine straight, her power measured in every blink and breath. No warmth, no mercy. Just legacy. She didn't speak immediately. She let the silence work its weight. Let it dig into David like cold steel, then effective immediately. She said, "You are relieved of all executive duties at Kingsley Holdings." A few gasps, one soft cough. A shifting of chairs. Your shares, she continued, are to be transferred into a blind trust until a new successor is named. The family estate will not be accessible to you. You are, as of now, cut off. David stared at her. "You're doing this in front of them." She tilted her head ever so slightly. "I taught you to never waste a stage." He laughed, softly bitter, almost admiring. "And here I thought you still believed in blood." "I believe in control," she replied coldly, "and you've proven unfit to wield it." He looked around the table at the men and women he'd dined with, advised, fought beside. "You all forget," he said, voice rising, "I made this company relevant again. You think the media circus around Ashley is the end of me? You're wrong. You're all betting on the past. I'm betting on the future." He turned back to his mother. "Enjoy your empire. I'll build something better with her." And with that, he walked out. No hesitation, no backward glance. That evening, rooftop garden. Kingsley Penthouseley stood alone on the rooftop, watching the sun dip below the skyline. Her phone buzzed. One message: "It's done. I'm out." She turned as the private elevator doors opened. David stepped out, jacket slung over one shoulder, exhaustion and defiance in every line of his body. She ran to him. They didn't speak at first. She just held him, arms around his waist, as he let his breath settle in her hair. Then she pulled back and looked up at him. "You lost everything today," she whispered. David shook his head. "No, I chose to walk away from everything that didn't matter." Please. Eyes glistened. "So what now?" He looked out over the city. "Their city now. We start from zero. It's just us. We build something they can't touch. Something real." She smiled. "Then I have something for you." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat and handed it to him. He opened it slowly, his brow furrowed, then lifted. It was a sketch, a design, a rough logo drawn in pencil. Ash & Co. Wellness Initiative. "I've been dreaming about it for years," she said. "A nonprofit clinic chain, mobile care for underserved communities, mental health support, real outreach." David looked at her, awed. "You want to do this?" I want us to do this," she said. "Yapta." "Mind, I have the heart. We can make something that's not built on fear and power plays, but on healing, on purpose." David took her face in his hands, overcome. "You're incredible." She smiled softly. "So are you. You just never had a reason to believe it." They stood like that, the sun slipping behind them, the world outside roaring, but unable to touch what they were beginning. A new legacy built not on bloodlines or empires, but on love and fire. 2 months later, downtown auditorium, Ash & Co. launched gala camera flashes. Velvet ropes. Rows of journalists, socialites, and philanthropists filled the high-ceilinged hall with a hum of anticipation. But this wasn't a corporate fundraiser. It wasn't another gala soaked in old money and guarded smiles. This was something new. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "please welcome the founders of Ash & Co. Wellness Initiative, Harris and David Kingsley." Applause filled the room. Ashley stepped onto the stage in a sleek navy dress, her bump visible now, graceful and radiant. David followed beside her, no longer hidden in boardrooms or power suits, but standing tall, reborn. purpose in his eyes, fire in his spine. Ashley stepped up to the mic. "Thank you," she began, voice clear and unwavering, "for believing that healing can be more than survival, that it can be a future." She paused, looking out into the crowd. "I grew up in systems that didn't know what to do with girls like me. I was passed from hand to hand, home to home. I was labeled before I could even speak for myself." Her voice softened. "And when I found out I was pregnant, I thought my dreams were over." David's hand brushed hers, grounding her. "But someone saw me," she said, her voice breaking just slightly. "Not just the headlines, not just the wounds. Me and my—" He stood beside me when it would have been easier to disappear. "Shh." She turned to him briefly, looked past between them, intimate, unshakable. "Ash & Co. is our way of giving that same hope back. To every girl who thought she was too broken, to every boy who thinks silence is strength, it's the parents, the nurses, the social workers who hold communities together when no one's watching. This is for them." Thunderous applause. David stepped forward. "We're launching 5 pilot clinics in underserved neighborhoods across the city," he said, "offering free mental health services, prenatal care, and trauma-informed support. We've partnered with local shelters, youth homes, and public hospitals to meet people where they are." Then, with a smirk, "No boardroom, no gatekeeping, just impact." Laughter, cheers. The applause was still going when the lights dimmed, and a short video began to play, a montage of testimonials, dreams, second chances, real stories. Backstage, minutes later, Ashley leaned against the curtain, breathless. David joined her, his hand resting over hers on her belly. "We did it," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "This is only the beginning." But just then, Julian burst into the room, phone in hand, eyes wide. "We've got a problem," he said. "It's your mother." David's jaw clenched. "What now?" Julian turned the screen toward them. A breaking news alert was flashing. Wexler Foundation announces new competing health initiative, care, vision, promising to fix what others broke. Initial reports suggest the foundation will open clinics just blocks from Ash & Co.'s pilot sites, offering similar services for free. Ashley's stomach turned. "She's trying to erase us, overwhelm us, starve us out." David stepped back, fury simmering beneath his skin. "She's not just fighting for control anymore," he murmured. "She's fighting for her legacy." Ashley looked at him. "Then we give her something she never expected." "What's that?" "Don't fight her with fire." Ashley's voice was firm. "We fight her with truth, with people, with stories she can't buy." Later that week, Southside Community Clinic. Ashley sat with a girl barely 16, her arms crossed, her face wary but curious. The clinic was bright, real, no marble, no cameras, just healing. "I saw you on the news," the girl said. "They said you used to be like ... in the system." Ashley smiled gently. "I still am, just on the other side of it now." The girl hesitated. Then quietly, "Can I stay here?" "A while." Ashley nodded, her heart full. "That's why we built it, for you." Meanwhile, Wexler Tower, Mrs. Wexler stood in her towering office, watching Ash & Co. gain traction not just in headlines but in hearts. In city council proposals, in global interest. Her face remained cold, controlled. But beneath it all, for the first time, she felt something new. 2 weeks later, Sunrise Shelter, Ashley's childhood group home. The air smelled of disinfectant, paperbacks, and pencil shadings. The same cracked floor tiles. The same window Ashley used to stare out of, imagining a world beyond. Foster files and routine inspections. But today, the walls had color. The once empty bulletin board now displayed college acceptance letters, art, even a photo of Ashley beside the mayor. She stood quietly in the doorway of the common room, watching 2 young girls, maybe 12, argue over crayons. A matronly voice cut through from behind. "You came back." Ashley turned, blinking. "Ms. Greer." older, grayer, but still wearing the same sunflower pin and sharp gaze. I said I would. They embraced brief, strong Ms. Greer pulled back, eyes wet. Oh. They talk about you in the papers, you know. Girl who made it out. Ashley shook her head. I didn't make it out. I came back in with a key. Later, Community Roundtable Sunrise Shelter Ashley stood at the front of a semicircle of teens. Foster parents, caseworkers, and local organizers. No stage, no mic. Just folding chairs, tea, and raw truth. You don't owe the world survival, she said, meeting the eyes of a boy in the back who hadn't spoken all session. You owe yourself healing. That's harder, but it's worth it. A hand rose. A girl in a hoodie, eyes sharp. What if we're just charity cases to people like you now? Ashley nodded. She'd expected that. I've been a headline, she said. I've been someone's pity project. But this Sash & Co. isn't built on charity. It's built on knowing what it feels like to be invisible. Silence. Then the boy in the back spoke. You're saying we're not broken? Ashley walked closer. Sat on the edge of the table, face open. I'm saying we were never broken. We were abandoned. I know. And that's not the same thing. His eyes filled just slightly. Meanwhile, Vexler, private estate, evening. Mrs. Vexler stood at the window, swirling her wine. Watching the firelight dance across her curated sculptures, a knock at the door. Her assistant entered. Ma'am, there's a letter, hand-delivered from Ms. Harris. Mrs. Vexler raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside, a simple card. You can build walls or bridges. You've taught me the first. I'm choosing the second. Ashley, no threat. No plea. Just a line in the sand. Mrs. Vexler stared at it for a long way. Time. Then she lit it on fire. And for a moment, just a second, her hand trembled. Following day, Ash & Co. Boardroom Julian spread the news articles across the table. Your stories everywhere. Youth programs are requesting expansion. An investor from Geneva just pledged $2 million in unrestricted funds. David looked up. We're scaling fast. Ashley nodded, quiet. But her gaze wasn't on the numbers. It was on the door. She stood and walked out into the hallway, where a young woman was pacing nervously. Can I help you? Ashley asked gently. The girl looked up, maybe 19, shaking. I saw. You speak, I'm pregnant. No one knows. I don't know where else to go. Ashley didn't hesitate. Come in. You're safe here. And just like that, another bridge. Another life. Please. 3 weeks later, Vexler Foundation Charity. Gallither Room gleamed with old money. Crystal chandeliers, tailored tuxedos. A string quartet played in the corner. The Vexlers had spared. No expense. David stood near the marble bar, his body undone, jaw clenched. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not anymore. Not after choosing Ashley. But when the invitation came embossed, discreet, and unsigned, he understood. It was time, across the room. Mrs. Vexler mingled, graceful as ever in black velvet, her diamond cuff catching every flash of light. But her smile wavered when she spotted him. David walked straight up to her. We need to talk. She didn't flinch, just nodded slightly. Follow me. Private lounge. Moments later, she poured herself a drink, eyes on the skyline. You've changed. No, I just stopped pretending. She turned. You left the family, the legacy. For her, David didn't blink. I left your version of it. Ashley taught me there's a better way. A beat. Mrs. Vexler's lips tightened. You could have had everything. I do have everything, he said. Respect, purpose, her. Voice dropped, low and bitter. You're choosing a girl from a group home over your own blood. She is my blood now, my family. One I chose, not one I inherited with strings. A long silence fell between them. Then her voice cracked. You think I never bled for this family? That I didn't sacrifice for you, your father, this legacy? David looked at her, and for the first time he saw not a titan, not a schemer, but a woman alone in a house full of ghosts. Still, his voice was firm. Then break the cycle, or you'll lose more than just your son. That night, rooftop of Ash & Co. Ashley stood with Julian and Grace, reviewing sketches for the next safe house project. Solar panels, gardens, art rooms. Healing made visible. David arrived, loosened tie but clear eyes. Ashley stepped away, met him under the string lights. You went, he nodded. We said what needed saying. Did it change anything? David looked at her steady, open. I don't know. But I'm not waiting for her to rewrite herself. I'm building something better, here, with you. Ashley's eyes welled, not from sadness but relief. It's the kind that comes when love isn't just spoken but shown. He took her hand. So, what's next, Ash? Next week press conference. City Hall. Ashley stood before a sea of cameras, flanked by city council members and young people from every corner of the city. We're launching the Bridge Project, she said, voice strong. A citywide network of safe homes, education pipelines, and trauma-informed recovery for youth aging out of the system. Applause. Flashbulbs. But she didn't smile for them. She turned to the front row, where a girl named Miko sat, holding her baby. Nodding through tears, Ashley smiled for her. 1 year later, quiet wedding in the greenhouse. There was no press, no orchestra, just jasmine vines, sunlight, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. Ashley stood barefoot on the moss-lined stone path. Her gown soft and simple, hair pinned with wildflowers. David waited at the altar, made of reclaimed wood, heart pounding. Julian officiated. Grace cried silently. Miko, now working as a counselor, held the ring box. When David looked at Ashley, his voice trembled not with fear, but awe. You changed my world, kitten. Not by force, but by believing in the broken pieces of it. Ashley's voice was steady, full of light. And you taught me that love doesn't ask us to be perfect. It just asks us to stay. They exchanged rings, not diamonds but bands engraved, with 2 words, found each other. 6 months later, Global Summit in Nairobi. Ashley stood on the grand stage, addressing leaders from around the world. Behind her, a map lit up with dots, each one a bridge project site. We were told we were too young, too emotional, too damaged. But look at us now. She pointed to the crowd. Former foster kids, street youths, young mothers, survivors turned builders. We didn't just survive. We built, and we're not done yet. David watched from the sidelines, pride flooding his chest. He no longer wore suits from his old life. His sleeves were rolled up. His ring glinted when he clapped out. They had done it together. Epilogue. Years later, the Wexler Foundation had changed. Mrs. Wexler, no longer on the board, had quietly begun funding anonymous scholarships under Ashley's Bridge Project. She never asked for credit. She never reached out. But every year, Ashley received a white envelope with a single line inside. Keep building what I couldn't. Ashley never replied. But she always smiled. In their home, laughter echoed. Children's drawings lined the hallway. Ashley's feet still tapped nervously before every big speech. David still called her kitten when no one was listening. And when the nights were quiet and the world felt impossibly vast, she would lay her head on David's chest and whisper, "We made it." And he would always say, "We're just getting started." 10 years later, a quiet question. The sun was setting. Over their garden, warm orange lights spilling across the grass. The twins were chasing each other barefoot through the wildflowers while David grilled on the back patio, humming an old tune. Ashley sat cross-legged on a picnic blanket, sorting through an old photo album. Their daughter, 9 years old and fiercely curious, plopped down beside her, eyes wide as she pointed to a picture. "Mom," she asked, "is that you and Daddy? Before you got married?" Ashley smiled at the image, her in an oversized sweater, David in a rumpled coat. both of them standing outside the first bridge project building with paint on their faces and exhaustion in their eyes. "Yes," she said softly. "That was a long time ago. But you look so different," the girl whispered. "Were you scared?" Ashley blinked slowly, remembering the ache in her ribs, the way she used to flinch when people raised their voices, the way David had stood between her and the world even when he was broken himself. "I was scared," she said honestly. "But your dad," he kept showing up, even when it was messy, even when I didn't think I was worth showing up for. "Did you love him right away?" Ashley laughed gently, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's cheek. "No, I fought it, but love, real love, doesn't always come loud or fast. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a heartbeat in the dark." Behind them, David called. "Out, dinner's ready," their son yelled back. "We're not done playing." Ashley rose to her feet and extended a hand. "Come on, let's go eat before Daddy burns the food." But her daughter lingered a second longer, looking again at the photo. Then she whispered, "I hope I find someone who looks at me like that." Ashley knelt beside her and kissed her forehead. "You will, sweetheart," she said. "But first, learn to look at yourself that way." Final scene, the roof late at night, after the kids were asleep. David and Ashley sat on the same rooftop where he had first told her the truth. The city lights blinked below. Her head rested on his shoulder. His fingers traced slow circles on her palm. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "All the drama, the Empire stuff." David laughed. "Not even a little. This is the Empire now." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "We did good, didn't we?" He kissed her temple. "We did better than good. We rewrote the story." And together, in that quiet moment, they watched the stars dot same. "Night," a whispered confession. Ashley leaned back, her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The night was warm but gentle, like the universe itself had slowed down to breathe with them. "I never told you," she murmured. David tilted his head. "Told me what?" She hesitated, then laughed under her breath. "That night, after your mother left, the first time you said you wanted to win my heart before the truth came out, I already loved you. Didn't know how to admit it." His breath caught. "You did?" he asked, barely above a whisper. She nodded, voice soft. "Even when I was terrified, even when the world looked at me like I didn't belong, you saw me. Not as a scandal or a mistake, but as a person. That kind of love. It stays." David closed his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed by the weight of her words. Then he pulled her closer, tucking her beneath his chin. "Every choice I made, even the reckless ones, were worth it if they led me to this." Ashley grinned. "Even the part where you almost burned every bridge in your family." Smirked. "Especially that part." She laughed. And for a moment the rooftop was filled with the kind of laughter that only comes after years of surviving, healing, and choosing each other over and over again. Downstairs, a new generation, the twins had snuck out of bed again, tiptoeing into the kitchen where Miko, now older, grayer, and very much family, was finishing her nightly tea. "You too," she said, not even turning. "Feet back in bed, or I'm calling Grace." The boy gasped. "You wouldn't?" Miko turned with a sly grin. "Try me." They giggled and bolted, bare feet smacking the floor. Miko watched them go, shaking her head. "I always said this family would drive me mad," she muttered. "And now they've multiplied." From the hallway, Grace, now CEO of the Bridge Projects Foundation, called out, "I heard that." Miko just smiled to herself. She'd watched Ashley grow from a scared, silent girl into the heart of the family. She'd watched David unlearn the cold calculations of empire and replace them with the quiet math of love and legacy. She'd watched this house, once filled with tension and secrets, become a place of refuge. One last time, the letter in a drawer David never locked, sat a letter faded, creased from being opened 1,000 times. Ashley had written it after their first child was born. "You were never supposed to stay, but you did." You were never supposed to fight for me, but you did. And I was never supposed to survive. But somehow with you, I did. So if you ever doubt what we built, remember this: we didn't win by destroying the world. We won by building a new one. A week later, the private boardroom, David stood at the head of the long glass table, his hands resting calmly on the polished surface. Behind him, the skyline glittered. But his focus was on the faces before him, melders in crisp suits, former allies of his father. Board members who had whispered threats behind closed doors. You all heard the rumors, David began, voice. Even now, I'll give you the truth. There was a slight murmur, then silence. Yes, Ashley is carrying my child. No, I will not step down. And no, he looked straight at Mr. Han, the most vocal opponent. We will not be going back to the days of arranged mergers disguised as marriages. You're jeopardizing decades of alliances, Han snapped. Your father, my father is gone, David said firmly. I'm not rebuilding his empire. I'm building something better. An uneasy quiet followed. Then Grace stepped forward from her seat beside him. The bridge project just secured a multi-billion-dollar partnership backed not by dynasties, but by innovation and trust. We're not just preserving power, we're redefining it. That silenced them more effectively than anything else could. That night in the nursery, Ashley rocked gently in the chair, her hand on her stomach, humming a lullaby her mother used. To sing, the walls were soft green, the crib already set up. The nightlight casting quiet stars across the ceiling, David entered quietly and crouched before her. Board's quiet now, he said. She smiled. And you? He leaned in and kissed her belly, louder than ever. I keep thinking, what kind of world are we giving them? Ashley looked down at him, her fingers brushing his hair. One where they won't have to fight for their humanity. One where love isn't a liability. He looked up. Do you really believe that? I do, she said, because we're already proving it. 2 years later, a garden grows. Courtyard once filled with marble, now brimmed with jasmine vines, raised beds, and laughter. Children ran barefoot between garden paths. Miko scolded them lovingly from a wicker bench. Grace watered seedlings while taking a call about a sustainable education grant. And in the shade of the archway, David held their daughter, now nearly 2, her curls wild and her giggle pure. Ashley joined him, dust on her knees from teaching the toddlers how to plant spinach. Remember when your mother said I had no allies? She teased. David looked around. Miko. Grace, the kids. It's the new board. It's the Thriving Bridge Foundation. They're home. He smiled. Turns out, he murmured, you didn't need allies. You just needed roots. Ashley kissed his cheek. And maybe a very reckless billionaire. They both laughed. Final scene, the new vow years from now, when their daughter would ask how it all began, Ashley would tell her not about scandals or war rooms, but about the night a man stood on a rooftop and swore he'd win her heart before the truth caught up, and how, somehow, he did not with power, not with secrets, but with love. 12 years later, Wexler Institute of Regenerative Leadership was quiet in the East Wing Library, except for the soft click of a pen and the turning of pages. Arielle Wexler Kingsley, sharp-minded, often barefoot and fiercely private, sat curled on the window seat, reading a dossier she wasn't technically allowed to access. But rules had always been flexible in her family. She had her mother's focus, her father's steel, something else, something she never spoke aloud, a need to prove she was more than a name. Behind her, a voice broke the silence. You're in my spot. Ariel didn't look up, then sit somewhere else. It's a boy, maybe 17, with sun-browned skin and a threadbare. Satya walked over anyway and sat across from her. Confident, unbothered. You're the heir. She finally glanced at him, curious despite herself. And you're new. He held out a hand. Kamari, she didn't take it. Ari's mouth twitched. I know, of course he did. Everyone always did. What? but his gaze held no flattery, no caution, just honesty. It unsettled her more than she liked. Later that night, rooftop garden Ariel stood alone, wind tugging at her braids. The city stretched beneath her, the hum of distant trains and fading sirens comforting. She didn't hear footsteps, but somehow she knew he was there. Kamari leaned against the wall, holding a sketch pad. "You like heights." She nodded. "They remind me I'm small." "Cute." "Most people don't want to feel small." She shrugged. "Small doesn't mean powerless." He tilted his head, considering her. "Is that why you've read classified reports before?" They hit committee. Her smile was sharp. "So you're spying on me now?" He smiled back, unthreatened. "Only when you make it interesting." The next day, Ashley stood behind her desk, watching her daughter pace. "You? Like him?" Ariel stopped. "I barely know him." Ashley's smile was soft, knowing I barely knew your father too. Until he made me stay. "I don't want his story," Ari said. "I want my own." "You'll have it," Ashley said, walking over and placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "But don't run from love just because it came wrapped in legacy." Ariel looked down, unsure. "What if I fail? What if I ruin everything you two built?" Ashley's voice was quiet but certain. "You weren't born to protect the past. You were born to build something new." 6 months later, Wexler Youth Alliance headquarters, East Annex. The building was still half dismantled, a construction site more than an office. But inside, the energy was unmistakable. Voices clashed in 3 languages. Paint streaked the walls. A garden had begun to rise in the atrium, planted by teenagers who'd never touched soil before. At the center of it all stood Ariel's, sleeves rolled up, notebook in one hand, paint on her jawline. She looked every inch like someone born to rule, but building from the mud. Kamari entered. Phone at his ear, saying something sharp in Yoruba. He paused when he saw her. "You're supposed to be in the stakeholder meeting?" She didn't look. "Up there arguing over whether composting is marketable." "I'd rather be useful," he chuckled, walking to her. "You're insufferable." She looked at him then. "You're late. You missed me." A blush crept to her cheeks, annoying, inconvenient. She didn't deny it. Later that night, rooftop again, they sat in silence, legs dangling over the edge. Below, the city pulsed. Above, a storm rumbled. Somewhere distant, the air smelled like rain and heat, and something about to change. Kamari turned to her. "You really believe we can fix it? The system?" Ariel didn't answer right away. "Then I believe we can plan something better. Let them chase perfection. I'll chase growth." He looked at her as if seeing something he hadn't before. Not just a name, not even just a partner, but a force. "I used to think legacy was a prison," he said. "But maybe it's a ladder or a torch," she replied. "But either way, we don't have to carry it alone." Their hands brushed. She didn't pull away this time. Flashback. A hidden letter found in a drawer the next morning. As Ariel searched her mother's old desk, she found it. A folded letter in Darren's handwriting. Dated 3 years before he passed. "It's my daughter. If you're reading this, it means I never got to tell you how proud I am. Not because you'll lead, but because I've watched how you listen. That will be your greatest power." And one day, when it's hard, when the weight feels like too much, I hope you find someone not to carry it for you, but with you. Let them in, Ari. You are not a fortress. You are a light. Tears slid silently down her cheek. Interior, late-night Wexler Alliance, research room. The building was mostly dark, save for one wing. Soft light glowed through the glass panels of the strategy room. Inside, Kamari sat cross-legged on the floor, old maps and blueprints spread out like a chaotic quilt. Ariel entered barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You're still at it?" He looked up, tired. "You said the urban zones in the south needed cooling corridors? I've been trying to trace old riverbeds, see if we can work with what was once alive." She handed him a mug and sat beside him. I used to think restoration was too slow, she said. Too idealistic. But it's the only rebellion that leaves something behind. Kamari leaned his head against the wall. You sound like Liana. Ariel didn't respond immediately. After a beat, I miss her. Okay, in ways I don't even have language for. Silence. Then Kamari's voice, softer than the storm earlier. She told me once that strength isn't in how loud you lead. It's how quietly you endure. Their eyes met, and in that quiet, something passed between them. Not romantic heat, but a deep, necessary understanding. One built from shared grief, vision, and the rare kind of trust born in fire. The following morning, the greenhouse was still under construction, but patches of life were already taking root. Cassava vines, banana trees, and sprouting yam hills nestled among repurposed wood and glass. Ariel crouched near a basin, where a group of kids from the local community were transplanting seedlings. She guided them gently, hands deep in dirt. One child, Adilu, no more than 10, looked up and asked, "Are you really the daughter of the Queen Woman? The one who made lights grow from the ground?" Ariel smiled. She wasn't a queen, but she knew how to grow things in darkness. "And what about you?" he asked. "What do you grow?" She paused. "People," she whispered, then added, louder, "I help people remember they can plant their own futures." Kamari watched from across the room. He didn't interrupt. Stirved the way he always did, quiet, steady. There. Later, rain begins to fall. Soft storm rolled in. Again. Ariel was at her desk, reading through Liana's last notes. Scribbled margins. Incomplete calculations. Half thoughts about soil, acidity, and youth labor unions. Kamari entered without knocking. "There's a delegation from Riverstone outside," he said. "They're demanding concessions." Again, Ariel closed the file. "We give them just enough to keep them coming back. Not enough to swallow us." He watched her, measured. "You're not your mother," he said. She looked up, startled. No," she answered, "but you're something she wasn't." A pause. He stepped closer. "You know how to let people in." Her breath caught. Not from the compliment, but from the way he said it. Not admiration, but belief. As if the foundation she was building wasn't concrete or soil, but trust. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Outside, the rain deepened. But the roots kept growing. Interior workshop space. Late evening, the converted storage room was alive with quiet labor. Fabric scraps, hand tools, and clay models lined the tables. Ariel stood at a workstation, her hands moving slowly, shaping a prototype for wind-powered irrigation units. Her brow was furrowed in thought, not just about the design, but about what it stood for. Across from her, Kamari set down a tablet. "You redesigned the vein. Why?" "Because wind doesn't blow the same way in Riverbend," she said. "If we pretend it does, we fail them." Kamari crossed his arms. "Planning for nuance." "I'm planning for trust," Ariel murmured. The room was quiet again, filled only with the soft whir of a 3D printer and the echo of distant laughter outside. The youth team celebrating another restored solar hub. Kamari leaned closer. Quietly, "Do you ever feel like you're building all of this for someone who can't see it anymore?" She didn't answer immediately. Her fingers traced the edge of the prototype. "Every day," she said. "But I also know, if she were here, she'd tell me to keep going, even when no one's watching. Especially then." His voice softened as if more for himself than her. "She used to tell me not to build for applause. Just build because you must." Ariel looked up sharply, surprised. "She said that to you, too." A moment passed between them. Something unspoken. They had both been shaped by Liana. Not in the same way, not evenly, but carved by. The same hands of purpose, hope, and painful expectations. Exterior rooftop gardens, midnight train had stopped. The air was clean. Ariel stood barefoot, letting the wind tangle her hair. From the rooftop, the view stretched over the district's tiny specks of green lighting up. Neighborhoods that had been dark for decades. Kamari joined her without a word for a while. They said nothing. Then he finally broke the silence, voice low. When this all started, I thought you were just her shadow. She didn't flinch. I know, she replied. But you're not, he added. You're the mirror she never looked into. You see the things she couldn't afford to feel. Ariel's throat tightened. She carried the weight of vision, she said. I carry the weight of remembering. Silence stretched again. Below them, the lights blinked in rhythm. Solar, patient. Reclaiming space inch by inch, Ariel finally turned toward Kamari, her voice steady. I'm not here to finish what she started. I'm here to start what we didn't think was possible. Kamari's eyes softened. Then we build from that. Their hands didn't touch. But something in the space between them did, a blueprint. Of resilience, drawn in silence, sealed in shared purpose, Interior Community Policy Lab. Afternoon light, the hum of quiet conversation filled the reclaimed municipal hall. Now repurposed into the community's policy lab. Chalkboards bore sprawling diagrams of food equity chains, youth-led design models, and rotating leadership councils. A large map of the Delta region hung on one wall, pinned with multicolored tags. Ariel stood at the head of a discussion circle, listening, really listening, as a young girl named Maseka spoke up. Her voice wavering, but sure. I know we've made progress, and the solar grid is stable now, Maseka said. But I still have to walk through 3 checkpoints to get to school. There are still districts where our ID cards flag us. The room quieted. Kamari glanced toward Ariel, but didn't speak. Ariel walked slowly to the board and circled. The corridor Maseka mentioned. Who designed these checkpoints? Interim authorities. Leftovers from the old admin. Then we stop calling them interim, Ariel said softly. We either hold them accountable or we reimagine the corridor ourselves. A ripple of energy passed through the circle. But reimagine how? Another youth leader, Keenan, asked. They've got control over the transport hubs. We can't just wish them away. Ariel looked around, her gaze direct. I don't believe in wishing. I believe in pressure. In systems that multiply small actions until they're undeniable. She looked at Kamari. He said at once, we don't wait for permission. Kamari gave a tight nod. Let's draft the first public corridor plan by next week, Ariel said, already moving toward the corner where regional maps were stored. Fully open access. Designed by us, owned by us. The room stirred, voices rising, not in protest, but in motion. They were tired, but no longer silent. Young, but no longer powerless. Exterior District 3 Riverbank, near sunset later. That evening, Ariel sat on a long concrete bench overlooking the newly re-welded banks of the river. Children ran barefoot in the shallows, their laughter unburdened by the history this place carried. The old power station loomed in the distance, now a community tech hub. Kamari approached slowly to steaming cups in hand. He handed her one. Mint. And ginger, he said. Ariel smiled. You remembered? I forget a lot, he said. But not the things that anchor you. They sat in silence, sipping, watching a young boy release a hand-built kite into the wind. The kite dipped, caught an updraft, and soared high above the river's bend. Ariel spoke without turning. They're going to push back hard when they see the corridor plans. They always do. But this time, she said, we'll have the community behind every step, not just signatures. Bodies, stories, data, wind at our backs. Kamari looked at her, a flicker of something like pride in his eyes. And if it breaks you, she'll finally turn to him. Then I break. Forward? He said nothing. But he stayed. Not as a savior, as a witness, as someone who had once doubted and now knew better.